Are you a philosophical zombie? Picture your best friend. Think about all the moments you've shared, the inside jokes, the late-night talks, the way they just get you. They laugh with you, they get angry for you, they cry with you. Everything about them feels so real, so genuine. Now, what if I told you that behind their eyes, there's nothing? No thoughts, no feelings, no inner world at all. Just a void. What if they're a perfect imitation of a person, a biological machine that says all the right things and makes all the right faces? But inside, the lights are out and nobody's home? This terrifying idea isn't from a sci-fi movie. It's a real philosophical concept known as the philosophical zombie, and it's a key that might just unlock one of the biggest mysteries in science: the problem of consciousness itself. Section 1. The zombie in the room. So what exactly is a philosophical zombie? First, forget the groaning, flesh-eating monsters. This kind of zombie is way more subtle and honestly, way more disturbing. A philosophical zombie, or P-zombie, is a hypothetical being that's physically identical to a person in every single way. Same body, same brain, same atoms arranged in the exact same pattern. If you scanned its brain while it listened to a song, you'd see the auditory cortex light up just like yours. If you poked it with something sharp, it would flinch, yell "ouch," and tell you it felt pain. It would talk about its hopes, its dreams, its deepest feelings. From the outside, a P-zombie is a perfect copy. But there's one crucial, terrifying difference. It has no subjective experience. There's no what it's like to be a zombie when a zombie sees the color red. It can identify it, describe its wavelength, and even say that red makes it feel passionate. But it doesn't experience the quality of redness, that inner private sensation you have. What philosophers call qualia is completely gone. The zombie's brain processes the data, and its body gives the right response. But there's no awareness inside. It's an automaton of flesh and blood, an empty shell performing a flawless imitation of a conscious being. The fact that we can even imagine such a creature forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. If a being can look and act just like us without being conscious, then what's consciousness even for? And more importantly, how can we be sure anyone but ourselves has it? Section 2. The hard problem of consciousness. This thought experiment isn't just a spooky story. It's one of the best ways to illustrate what the philosopher David Chalmers calls the hard problem of consciousness. To get the hard problem, it helps to know about the easy problems. And easy is very relative here. They're still incredibly complex for neuroscience, but we can see a path to solving them. The easy problems are all about the functions of the brain. How does it process light and sound? How does it pull together information to create a map of the world? How do we focus our attention or access a memory? How does the brain control our behavior? These are all questions about the machinery. Scientists can map the neural pathways and measure the chemical reactions to figure out how the brain gets these jobs done. But even after you've solved all of those problems, after you've mapped every last neuron and can predict exactly how a person will behave, a huge mystery is left over. The hard problem, as Chalmers puts it, is this. Why does all that brain processing feel like anything? Why doesn't all this complicated number crunching just happen in the dark, without an inner movie? Why do you have a first-person perspective filled with colors, sounds, and emotions? Science is great at explaining what the brain does, but it has a very hard time explaining what it feels like to be a brain. That's the explanatory gap. The P-zombie argument is designed to pry that gap wide open. If you can conceive of a zombie, a thing that's functionally identical to a human but has no consciousness, then it suggests consciousness must be something extra, something layered on top of all the physical stuff. If a P-zombie is even logically possible, it means a purely physical explanation of the brain will never be the whole story. Section 3. But how would you know? Let's go back to your best friend. Imagine for a second they are a philosophical zombie. Every memory you share is just you interacting with an unconscious machine. Every laugh was a simulated sound. Every tear was a salt solution dispensed by a perfect biological program. The advice they gave you wasn't born from empathy, but from an algorithm that calculated the right words to say. How would you ever know? The short answer is, you wouldn't. By definition, there's no test you could run, no question you could ask, that would expose the emptiness inside a P-zombie could pass any test for intelligence or emotion you could dream up. It would swear it's conscious, describe its inner world with beautiful poetry, and might even write philosophical papers about the mystery of its own non-existent consciousness. This is where the idea goes from a quirky puzzle to a source of real existential dread. It creates a deep and incurable skepticism about other minds. We just assume that the people around us have an inner life as rich as our own. We trust that smiles and frowns on the outside match up with feelings on the inside. But the zombie argument suggests this is just an article of faith. You only have direct access to one mind, your own. For everyone else, you're just observing their behavior and guessing there's someone in there. So would it even matter? If your zombie friend is still a loyal and supportive companion, does their lack of inner experience change anything for you? Some would say it changes everything. The value we put on relationships is based on a shared connection between two conscious minds. A relationship with a zombie would be a one-way street you'd be pouring your heart out to avoid. Section 4. Are P-zombies even possible? Of course, a lot of people think this whole idea is nonsense. Many philosophers and scientists, especially physicalists, argue that P-zombies aren't possible, not even in theory. One of the biggest critics, philosopher Daniel Dennett, says the idea of a P-zombie is just logically confused. Basically, his position is that consciousness isn't some extra, magical dust sprinkled on top of the brain's functions. Consciousness is the sum of all those complex functions working together, self-monitoring, talking about our feelings, pulling information together. That's what being conscious is. From this point of view, any being that could do everything a conscious human can do, including talking about its experiences and reflecting on its own thoughts, would, by definition, be conscious to Dennett. Trying to imagine a being that does all of that but isn't conscious is a failure of imagination. You're trying to subtract consciousness while leaving all the functions that make it up. He argues that once you have a perfect physical copy of a human, you've already got consciousness in the box. There's nothing left to take away. For a physicalist, then, the hard problem isn't really a problem at all. It's just a misunderstanding of what consciousness is. They believe that as science gets better, we'll eventually have a complete explanation of the brain, and that will be a complete explanation of consciousness. There won't be any gap left over, and the P-zombie will be exposed as a confused idea. Section 5. Beyond zombies, a conscious universe? The zombie argument seems to force us into a corner. Either you think zombies are impossible and consciousness is purely physical, or you think they're possible and consciousness is something non-physical. But there's a third, even wilder path some thinkers are exploring: panpsychism. Panpsychism flips the whole problem on its head. Instead of asking how consciousness pops out of non-conscious matter, like a brain, panpsychism says it never did. It suggests that consciousness is a fundamental and widespread feature of the universe, present in some tiny, basic form in all matter. Now, this doesn't mean electrons feel anxiety or that rocks are pondering philosophy. It just means that at the most basic level of reality, particles have some incredibly simple, primitive form of experience. The rich, complex consciousness of a human brain, then, isn't magically created from nothing. It's built up from combining countless tiny, simple experiences. The big challenge for panpsychism is the combination problem. How do these little bits of micro-consciousness combine to create the single, unified consciousness that you and I have? Panpsychism neatly sidesteps the hard problem by saying consciousness was always part of the deal. In this view, there are no zombies, because all physical things have some kind of inner experience tied to them. It's an idea that gets rid of the chilling loneliness of the zombie problem and replaces it with a universe that's buzzing with consciousness. Conclusion: the philosophical zombie is a ghost that haunts our modern understanding of the mind. It's a thought experiment that forces us to look past our easy assumptions and confront the massive mystery at the center of our own existence. What really is the link between the physical meat in our heads and the reality we experience every second? Is consciousness just a clever trick of a biological computer, as the zombie deniers would say? Or is it something more, a non-physical layer floating above the mechanics of our neurons? Or could the truth be even stranger, that we are all part of a universe that is, in its very essence, conscious? We'll probably never be able to prove that P-zombies don't exist, and that leaves us in an unsettling but fascinating place. So, look at your friends, your family, the strangers you pass on the street. How can you be sure you're not surrounded by them? And maybe the most chilling thought of all, how can you prove you're not one yourself? If this made you question reality, share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think consciousness really is? And if you want to explore more of life's biggest and weirdest questions, make sure you subscribe.